not know death when you see it, old man.
We all recall the death of the Witch-King in Peter Jackson's acclaimed trilogy. The death of the Lord of the Nazgûl at the hands of Éowyn and Merry is forever etched into the minds of fans. But have you ever wondered more about where the Nazgûl came from? And did you know there was a prophecy stating that the Witch-King would not be killed by a man? Today, within the haunting halls of Fantasy Archive, we embark on a journey to uncover the Nazgûl, Sauron's most infamous and dreaded enforcers. Grab your daggers and stay tuned. We will look into the Witch-King's strategic genius, unraveling why he is the ultimate nightmare for the free peoples. The Nazgûl, also known as the Ringwraiths, were once 9 kings of the kingdoms of men. While Tolkien's work does not go into detail about the early lives of these kings, who would later become the Nazgûl, we do know that the Nazgûl themselves were first seen in 2251 of the Second Age. But how did it all begin? It all started with the Rings of Power, created by the Gwaithian Mirdain of Eregion, elven jewelers led by Celebrimbor. They were created as a result of Sauron's influence, who at the time could still shapeshift and assume a look convincing enough to trick at least some elves. The idea behind these Rings of Power was to slow down the decay and preserve Middle-earth, which after Morgoth's defeat, suffered from the impact of his spirit. Arda now had plagues, extremely cold weather, unbearable heat, and other concepts which did not exist before. The rings made Arda resemble the splendor of Valinor, at least to some extent. So in total, 19 were created. When Sauron stole 16 of the 19 Rings of Power, he gave 9 of them to the kings of men. Using his dominance over the rings, Sauron corrupted the 9 kings, and over years of wearing the Rings of Power, the once noble kings slowly withered away until they were nothing but wisps of their former selves. Eventually, the corruption led to them becoming the 9 Ringwraiths, or Nazgûl, that we are familiar with today. While there are 9 of them, the names of only 2 of them are mentioned: the Witch-King of Angmar and Camul the Easterling. Camul the Black Easterling is believed to be the only one of the 9 to be from the East. It is thought that he was a Rune King, though there aren't many details given on the subject. He was the second in command to the Witch King. After him, Camul had the best ability to perceive the presence of the One Ring, but his power was most confused and diminished by daylight. It was often sent on particularly important missions, such as taking command of Dol Guldur and trying to find Frodo in the Shire. He came pretty close to doing so too. He is the Nazgûl who says, "Baggins," and who almost caught the hobbits when he sensed the ring. Now, as to the Nazgûl leader, there is a lot more to say of the Witch-King of Angmar. While there is some speculation that the Witch-King was a powerful sorcerer and of Númenórean heritage, there aren't any definitive notes on the matter. Some even question if he was actually a king. There were records of every Númenórean king, and none of them received Rings of Power. And so during the rise of the Ringwraiths in the Second Age, their leader was simply known as the Lord of the Nazgûl. As Lord of the Nazgûl, he rose to power alongside his Dark Master Sauron in the Second Age as one of his commanders. When Sauron had the One Ring taken from him by Isildur, the Witch King and other Ringwraiths lost their connection to power and their physical forms, fading back into the darkness that had engulfed them since they were gifted the Rings of Power. It would be many centuries before he or other Nazgûl were heard or seen again. Of course, like most things that are terrible for your health, the Witch King popped up again. While Sauron was regaining his power in the Third Age, the Witch King and the Nazgûl were as well. Although Sauron seems to be the ultimate evil, by the Third Age the Free People's most tangible threat was the Witch King. Sauron's days in battle were done, but for the Witch King it was only the beginning. It was the year 1300 TA when the Witch King quietly made his way to Angmar in the north and established himself in Khardum. He started to grow an army of men, orcs, and other evil creatures. He was soon titled the Witch King by the people of the northern land he warred against. The Witch King was far from done preparing the world for his master's return. But he was patient. He wanted the kingdoms of Arnor in the north and Gondor in the south. At this point in the Third Age, many of the northern kingdoms had become scattered, divided in 3 factions for each of the sons of Elendil. He saw an opportunity to break the north from within. The Witch-King and the other Nazgûl began to lay waste to much of the north. In TA 1356, after forging an alliance with the Hillmen who had taken control of Rudor, one of the 3 northern factions, the Witch-King began a long war against the Dunedain. While this war had lasting consequences that would change the path of Middle-earth forever, it came to an official ending in TA 1409, when the Witch-King led his army to attack Amon Sol, which was built upon Weathertop. Amon Sol was burned, and King Arveleg I of Arthedain and Prince Cardolan were killed. With this victory, the Witch-King invaded the kingdom of Cardolan and annexed Rudor. The last of the Dunedain were expelled or killed. An uneasy peace remained. However, the Witch-King and the Nazgûl did not stay away forever. Eventually, Cardolan fell to his power. Living on an eternally deathless life as he did, the Witch-King claimed victory in TA 1974 when his army gained control of Fornost, taking Arnor's capital from King Arvedui, who escaped to later drown in the Ice Bay. The Witch-King made his seat of power there, but would soon find himself under attack by King Eärnor of Gondor, the elves of Lindon, and the remains of the Dunedain. While the battle that was to come was called the Battle of Fornost, it never actually happened in Fornost. It happened in the former capital of Anui Minas, which was to the west of Fornost. The Witch-King was overconfident and left the city's fortress. The cavalry of Gondor hid in the hills to ambush, while Eärnor's main army met the Witch-King in combat. This eternally classic pincer attack led to the defeat of the Witch-King's army. The Witch-King attempted to flee the field, but was cornered by an army of Rivendell elves that came up from the south. With nothing left to do, the Witch-King himself arose to challenge Eärnor. While Eärnor was prepared to attack, his horse was unwilling to do so. Fear of Nazgûl is common in animals and people of Middle-earth, and so when the horse refused to follow through with its master's plans, the Witch-King used this opportunity to flee. When Eärnor made to follow the Lord of Nazgûl, he was stopped by the elf Glorfindel, who stated what to some is considered Glorfindel's prophecy of the Witch-King's doom. "Do not pursue him. He will not return to these lands. Far off yet is his doom, and not by the hand of man will he fall." Whether this was an actual prophecy or simply the observations of an ancient elven soldier is unknown, but as we know, it would certainly come true. Despite the defeat, the Witch-King had succeeded at what he hoped and destroyed the Dunedain of the North. They moved back to Mordor for some years, returning to cause chaos in TA 2000. The Witch-King and the Nazgûl attacked Gondor, weakened by plague and other enemies. They laid siege to Minas Ithil, which held sieged for 2 years before it fell. It was taken over by the Witch-King and named Minas Morgul. In TA 2043, Eärnor became King of Gondor upon his father's death. The Witch-King challenged him not once but twice to single combat. While Eärnor refused the first time, he took up his sword at the second challenge. He went to Minas Morgul, entered the gates, and he was never heard from again. While various adaptations have added some reasoning to his disappearance, no actual reason is ever given in Tolkien's canonical works. In 2063 TA, the Watchful Peace began and would last for 400 years. Though time passes quickly when you have forever, Gandalf would confirm Sauron was the necromancer housed in Dol Guldur. Despite being found out, Sauron simply withdrew to Mordor, where he declared himself returned and sent the Witch-King and Nazgûl out to hunt down his One Ring, currently safely tucked in the care of Frodo Baggins. And while they spent much of the War of the Ring searching for the tiny hobbit, and coming very close to finding him multiple times, they were unable to secure him. The Witch-King would finally fall in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. When he attacked King Theoden of Rohan, he scared his horse into stumbling and crashing the Rohirrim king. While Theoden died, the brave Éowyn and Merry stumbled upon the scene. They cornered the Witch-King in the now famous scene. The Witch-King stated no mortal man could hinder him. But no living man am I. You look upon a woman, Éowyn I am, Eormund's daughter. You stand between me and my lord and kin. Begone, if you be not deathless. For living or dark undead, I will smite you if you touch him, Éowyn told him. While the Witch-King was distracted, Merry stabbed him with his enchanted barrow blade, an ancient weapon given to each of the hobbits by the mysterious Tom Bombadil, and one of the few weapons that could harm the Witch-King. While he was distracted by the hobbit-induced pain, he was struck through his helm by Éowyn, leading to his final defeat. Glorfindel's prophecy was certainly fulfilled. He did in fact not fall to the hands of a man, but to a woman and a tiny hobbit. Interestingly enough, both Rohan and the Shire were lands gifted to the inhabitants by the Dunedain. So Éowyn and Merry, in a way, avenged the kings of the Dunedain killed by the Witch-King. After his death, Camul the Easterling became the Lord of the Nazgûl for a short time. However, his reign over the Ringwraiths did not last long, as he and the Nazgûl were destroyed alongside their Dark Lord Sauron when Golem destroyed the One Ring in Mount Doom.